Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us a final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. Then it's time to turn your pods up, because we're live to tape from the mountains of West Virginia. It's time once again for Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
Live to tape from the mountains of West Virginia, it's another episode of Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, when we talk about journeys, nothing that I know of can compare to our guest's very own experience. Her memoir, Misfit In Hell to Heaven Expat, invites the readers to follow her tentative footsteps through hell and to share her encounter with the total bliss of heaven, a helpful look into losing one's fear of death, and a few secrets of what life on planet Earth is all about. All this plus more. Please welcome to Let's Find Out a new friend of the show, author MK McDaniel. MK, welcome to Let's Find Out. It's a privilege having you on the show.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and you can go ahead and call me Kathy, okay?
Perfect. Kathy, it is. Thank you again for being here. And before we started, it's interesting, when I was reading the intro and our conversation we had before the show, one of the things about this program is called Let's Find Out. It's mostly kind of a selfish thing because it's my journey into finding out what life is all about, secrets of the universe, whether I'm in heaven or below or in between. And as I talked earlier, I consider myself to be kind of a tough guy. I do have some fears, but reading the bio and information about the book, nothing scares me the most. And I know some people may find it like, come on, man, really? But the fear of death, to me, that's something that I can't seem to shake ever since I was young. While I think I know what awaits afterwards, the small voice inside me believes otherwise. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So let's dive into this. What's going on in your life right to the point when you had this experience?
Well, I'll just preface it by saying that I was a Catholic. My dad had a near fatal accident in World War II, and he promised God if he got him out of the mess that the family would become Catholic. So we always were. Went to Catholic schools, Catholic church, all that. And part of the teaching that I received was that God was a little harsh with the rules and stuff, and that most of us won't do a straight shot to heaven, maybe Mother Teresa, St. Francis, but the rest of us would end up in a place called purgatory. And we were told it was like hell, except you would get out. They drummed this into us so much that we even had ways to shorten our stay in purgatory. If you said a rosary, you got like 300 days off of purgatory, or if you went to extra masses, you got all the. So this is this great math problem that I dealt with my whole life. And I was scared to die, because I knew I was going to go to purgatory. That was frightening. But I just always, and talk to my guardian angel, and, hey, help me out here. And that's how I grew up. So now I'm in Seattle. I'm taking care of my best friend. We had been engaged for 7 years, but now we were friends, and he's got leukemia. We're both in our early 50s. He needed a caregiver and asked if I'd help him. And I said, sure. So went to Seattle. I'd been living in California. So it drug on and on and on. Instead of the 3 months we were told, it turned into almost 9. And by the end of that time, he died. And I was spiritually and physically and emotionally a wreck. And so when this big flu came around, a lot like COVID, I caught it. And it turned into pneumonia really quickly. And then a good friend of mine got me to the hospital, a doc in the box. Just as I felt the life force just kind of draining out through my feet, and blacked out. And they put me in an ambulance, got my heart started, and I woke up in the emergency room in an oxygen tent. And a couple days later, and they said that I had lung failure, ARDS, and that they didn't know how to treat it. It was a syndrome, not an illness. And so they were just going to slap me into this drug-induced coma and throw the book at me and try and save my life. But they said it was about a 40% chance that I'd make it. You know, all that just boom, boom, boom happened. And my family was there. They flew in from Colorado and California, and there was nothing else to say but good luck, you know? So the last thing that the doctor told me is they were going to give me white amnesia, and I would be unable to remember anything that could happen. Just go to sleep. It just be out, you know, you'll be unconscious until you either die or we wake you up, you know? So that's what I knew. And I went unconscious.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought it was a little in between there.
Uh-huh.
Was that the last thing you heard from the doctor before he induced you into that?
Yeah. He says, you will not be able to remember anything that happens to you, so don't worry about it.
Wow.
Famous last words. So anyway, I was out, and I don't know when it happened, but I became conscious, and I was in a completely dark place. There was no sound. I thought I was in a closet. I really didn't know where I was or what was going on. I couldn't remember being in the hospital. I was just somewhere, you know, and I waited, and it wasn't scary at first, but then after a while, it started getting a little brighter, and it was kind of reddish glow thing happening. And I thought the sun was coming up, and I thought, well, at least I'll be able to see where I am. And then as it got lighter, there was this swirling fog, and it got hot, and it stunk terribly. And I all of a sudden heard this voice come out of the fog that said, do you know where you are? And I racked my brain, and the only thing I could come up with was hell. And then this thing goes, wah, well, just like in a monster movie, scared me to, you know, death. And I turned and ran into the fog, knowing I had to get away from that thing. This adventure was a series of segments, almost like being on movie sets. It was so strange. I had no idea I was dead. I just, you know, wasn't in Kansas anymore. And so in the dark, all of a sudden lights would just come up really bright, and there would be a scene. And I never knew what it was going to be, but it was always bad. And the first one was this destroyed city, big tall buildings had fallen over, and there's sounded like metal walking on rocks. And I thought maybe aliens had come. And then I thought, no, maybe there was a nuclear bomb. All I know, there was strange people wandering around. It was very dangerous. And I just ran to try and get into a better, safer place. And I tried to get up a wall, and I lost my grip, and I fell backwards, and I thought, oh, geez, this is going to hurt. But then the lights went out. Then the lights came up again a few minutes later. There's no time over there, so you really can't tell how long things are. And then this time, I love it, looking at your logo back there with Bigfoot on it, your hat. But boom, I wake up, I open, you know, my eyes, and there's a Bigfoot kind of thing standing there, you know, one of the things I'm scared about. And I was totally shocked. I thought, do I freeze? Do I run? What's going on? But then it said, you know, you want to get out of here? And I thought that was strange that he spoke perfect English, but I'm not going to make any waves. And I said, yeah, I do. And he says, okay, I got a job for you, you know, and you get this done, and I'll see you get out of here. So I thought, okay, sure. So he hands me these kindergarten scissors that, you know, cut paper, and he waves his arm. And as far as I could see was all these really big berry bushes, the blackberry bushes with the big thorns on them. And it's just thick as far as you can see. And he says, you cut all that down, and I'll see you get out of here. And he kind of chuckles. And I thought, well, this bully is, being facetious. This can't happen, but he's getting a kick out of it. And I don't like bullies, and I don't like being told what to do. And so I thought, blank, I will just get down here and start cutting, and maybe I'll figure a way out. So I cut the first one. It took forever. I was just cutting because these scissors are dull, and it finally broke loose. And so I stuck that, ouch, but it's got thorns on it, stiff it behind me, turned around to get another, cane. And the first one grew back, all the way back. And this guy just, he thinks this is the funniest thing he's ever seen, and he says, just despair, just give up. You're not getting out here. And I said, no. So I went down to start cutting, and the lights went out. And the lights came up. And it was always worse. The next was a strange one, and like a movie setting with people I knew. And I thought that, again, I didn't know I was dead. So I saw live people down there. And that's very unusual. A lady's writing a book about it now. I'm going to be in it. So that was a bad scene. Then I went to this hospital scene that was really horrible. These people were doing abortions on these ladies, and I had this job of carrying the little aborted babies into this big room where there's piles of these little bodies. And I came back out. Another Bigfoot was doing that, actually. And they carried big sticks and stuff, like they were going to belt me with them. And I said I wasn't going to do it. It was disgusting. It was immoral. No, I'm not going to do it. He says, well, raise that stick like he's going to beat me. And he says, you're going to be sorry, because it's going to just get worse. And I just close my eyes, and the lights go out, and the lights come up. There was a long road in between. Sometimes it was not really a road, but it was like a path, a wide path. It was like the moon up there. There was nothing but rocks and dirt, and a horizon would look like fire coming, at you from that way, and no stars, no moon. And sometimes I would just walk on this road thinking it's got to lead out of here. There's got to be other people. This is ridiculous. What is going on? And sometimes I'd meet people or creatures or something along this road. And toward the end, I ran into a bunch of zombies. I watched a lot of those horror shows when I was a child. I mean, Dracula, Frankenstein, werewolf, I saw them all. So I kept having these scenes come up, and the zombies were not good at all. It was sexual assault on a large level. It was horrendous. I got up finally because one of the other demon ladies came over and says, you're with us, with this whole bunch of ladies, I guess, had been through the same thing I had, and trudged us through the snow for such a time that when we first started walking in this tundra area, it was just snow on the ground. But by the time we trudged to where she was taking us, the snow had kept coming the whole time, and it was up to our chests. So cold as hell was a real thing. And we finally got to this horrible shack looking thing. And she says, okay, now we wait for customers. Well, we knew what that meant. And that was like, how can this get any worse? I just still had no idea where I was until I said to her, I've been here a long time, and this seems like a particularly nasty situation. Is there something going on? I don't know. And she says, well, geez, it's Christmas on Earth. That's always the worst day in hell. And I thought, hell? What? I couldn't believe it. And I thought, still bucking it. I just would not despair. They kept saying, give up. And I thought, no. So I started singing A Christmas Carol, Away in a Manger, my favorite. And I got through the first line, away in a manger, no crib for his bed. And she turned around and yelled, shut up. And so the other ladies thought, yeah, that got her goat. Let's just all keep singing. So we did, the little Lord Jesus lay down his street head. Before I got the word Jesus out, she shrieked and jumped at me. and I closed my eyes and the lights went out as usual. But then the lights came up again, and this time they didn't hurt my eyes, and it was like a warm light. And I was filled with this joy and bliss and happiness, and nothing that had happened before was anywhere near in my mind. Nothing was in my mind except enjoying this exceptional. Yeah, it's ineffable. You can't explain. If everything good that ever happened in your life times a million, it gets close. It was just wonderful, just floating in this. And eventually it kind of calmed down a little bit, and I could see my friend who had just died the month before of leukemia, and he was there, and he looked great, and he looked about 35 years old. He was wearing a sweater I gave him, and I thought, shoot, he doesn't know he's dead. I'm not going to be the one to tell him. And I just thought that, and he started laughing, and I thought, he heard me. And I thought, oh my gosh, if he's dead, then I'm dead, and we're in heaven, and it doesn't get any better than this. I was so excited and so happy. And he got a little closer and said, oh, Mary Kay, you've got too much left to do. And I thought, what? They're kicking me out? I said, no, absolutely no. I just crossed my arms, and the lights went out. And then the lights came up, and the lights are too bright. There's people milling around again. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm back in hell. And then my daughter turns around and says, Mom's back. And now I'm really confused. And she comes over and says, boy, you've been really sick. They told us at one point you weren't going to make it. And, my mother's saying, yeah, we had this prayer circle going around the world. We brought you back. And I said, I couldn't say anything, thank God, because I would have been rude. I had that thing in my throat, and because I didn't want to be there. I was distraught that I had been kicked out of heaven. And I'm thinking, gosh, I was 86 pounds after 3 weeks in a coma. I had no muscle mass. I could blink my eyes and move one finger. And I thought, I've got too much left to do, and I can't even breathe. It was depressing, very depressing. And so I was in the ICU for a month, and I had to go to a physical rehab facility to gain weight and try and learn how to walk and talk and go up and down stairs. All my muscle memory was gone. So I was like a baby. And so that was another month. And then I went home and tried to get my life back. And it was terrible.
And during this time, if you don't mind me asking, while you were experiencing this, because you talked about the senses, so all
Yeah.
the normal human senses were still there in your spiritual state. Did you see anybody else? Were they in your glorified body? Did you have the human look still?
I couldn't, there's no mirrors. There's no watches. There's nobody to say, look at your feet. I mean, none of the thing is that our soul is us. Our soul is our personality and who we are. Our body is just like a car. We get in our car and we drive around, we get where we're going, we get out. That's our soul. So no, I was always me, and I never felt like I wasn't. It was very weird.
And with the contact you made with a female that was, I believe it was hell, you were going through the first stages before you got a taste of heaven. How long do you think you were in that state, and how long did the doctor say you were out?
I was out for 3 weeks almost. And so that's a long time, but it felt like a lot longer. Again,
Okay.
over there's no time. So when I had a lot of time to just sit and think about it, because I couldn't move, but it felt a long time. It felt like 2 years. I replayed it in my mind. It was just a long time. So when I came back, I was really confused on that. But that's very typical for people that go on the other side. There is no concept of time. You can be there for 5 minutes, and it feels like years.
And I've come to understand, because I've heard stories from other people, not personal story, but I've read articles, because there's no concept of time in the spiritual world.
That's an earth thing.
Right.
That's an earth thing because we rotate and, the crops come up and the moon goes around. So when you're not in this universe or in this reality, it's different.
Because I've heard it is like 1 year to God is 1,000 of ours.
Probably. I don't know.
So
Yeah, because that's eternal on the other side. It's eternal. We can't, our little human brains can't really grasp the enormity of heaven or God's. I mean, all our universes and everything are just, we can't imagine how big they are.
you're 100% correct. And this wasn't the classic case of once you crossed over that when you left your body, you didn't see yourself in the hospital or
No.
anything like that. It was kind of like somebody flipped a switch and boom, there you are.
Yeah. That's kind of like what happens to people in comas. That's pretty common. You get close to death and I don't know, your soul just gets loose or something and you float off. There's no technical term for it, I guess. It's near death. If you have a heart attack and you're dead for 20 minutes, you're dead. They call it a near-death experience, but you're really dead. But a near-death experience can also happen to somebody that their plane's about ready to crash, right? And at the last minute they pull up, but they're near death and their soul can leave. And then if you get sent back, you're sent back. You got to have a body to go back into. But some people, I've never heard of anybody that wanted to come back, except for maybe somebody who died or was dying because they just are giving birth to a brand new baby, or they've got a couple of little ones at home and they just can't stay. They have to go back. But most of the time we go back kicking and screaming like me.
Well, I could imagine once you get a taste of the glory.
Man.
Yeah.
So you said you were scared of dying, and I'm saying what I learned out of this whole thing, and it took me 10 years to find somebody that would even listen to me, because nobody wants to hear about going to hell. Scares the hell out of them,
Mm-hmm.
So I finally found, through a series of synchronicities, the group in Seattle, which is the IANS group, International Association of Near-Death Studies. There's thousands, of people that millions actually on the planet right now who've had near-death experiences. But it's so comforting to get around a bunch of people that say, oh yeah, you had a near-death experience. And the distressing ones only happen about 3 out of 10. And what they told me is, gee, we never get to hear those. Could you tell us about yours? It sounds fascinating. All of a sudden I was normal. It was just such a relief after 10 years. So now I've been with them 12 years, 13 years, and been able to find other people who've had distressing near-death experiences. I've got a sharing group once a month on IANS for those types of people. There's been more, people have written more about them. So it's what we have determined. I was told this recently. Out of like the millions of people who have gone over to the other side, not one person has mentioned judgment. Not one. They say you get a life review and you have to kind of, it took me years to understand this, but they all talk about the fact that they know then that we all start in heaven. We're all souls, which is pieces of God, and God wants to experience things, and we're individual in one sense, but we're also, everything is part of God anyway. And with the dark matter and all energy is connected. That's all God. So we come down to Earth. You can go to a lot of different planets, different solar systems, whatever. It's huge out there. And you can go to Earth, which is supposedly the toughest gig. The brave souls come here. Because look around, Earth's kind of a tough place.
It is, yeah.
We come down to learn things, to experience things, to maybe help lift the density of what's going on down here. And then when we always have our free will, if we're going a direction, you think, I think I'm off kill. This doesn't feel right anymore. I'm going to go this direction. But we are mind wiped when we come down here. So we're not allowed That's cheating if we
Yeah.
knew what we were here for. And then when we die, we get a life review. I mean, we go to heaven, we get the life review, which is cool. They say it's like a movie, and you get to see from the time you're conceived to the time you die, every part of your life like this. Get popcorn. It's going to be great. The thing is, they're going to flip that around, and then you're going to see your life again as other people saw it, as they're interacting with you. So if you have a good day, you help a lady across the street, you give a guy a ride home, you don't curse at somebody in the grocery store, you have a good day, you get to feel how all those people felt when they interacted with you. However, you're grumpy, you've had a bad day, you've kicked the dog, you scream at your kid, whatever, you're going to get to feel how it felt. So that's the only karma, which you put out, you get back. And that's a learning experience. Oh, I did really good here. Gee, I should have been a little more patient there. But it's not like you're condemned for it or anything. You just get to understand it. That to me, I totally can wrap my mind and my soul around that. I'm not alarmed. I'm not scared about dying again. I know that from this time on, I mean, at one point when I was back, I was still a little goosey about, oh, geez, wonder if I go back to that place again. I don't want to do that. And I prayed a lot, and I got an answer, which came over a period of months in segments of 2. I says, I don't want any now shalt nots anymore. Give me something positive I can do every day that's easy, loving and kind, merciful and forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. So I say that every morning. Kathy, if you can remember nothing else, be loving and kind today. Just today. Just no matter what happens, no matter what comes up, take a breath and just put loving and kindness around that. So that's all you need to know. And the worst that'll happen is in the life review, you'll go, ooh, maybe I should have been a little nicer there. That's as bad as it gets. So there's no reason to fear death.
Wow, very encouraging what you say. So the rules are pretty simple, but we as humans make it a lot more complicated than it needs to
I
be,
think
correct?
so. Religion comes from people over the millennia, man-made rules. I don't like to get too deeply into that, but it doesn't. My only caveat to people is if you're in some sort of cultural family, religious such and such that really stretches and says, if you don't believe this, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. Don't let anybody tell you they have the authority, or anybody has the authority to go to hell. You only go if you make one for yourself. Now, I know there's evil and negative energy and stuff out there, but that has nothing to do with God.
Wow. And with the support group, I would assume, since there's so many people, is a multi-faith group. Did everybody's experience, was it similar, or were there
Yeah.
anything?
Well, some people see Jesus,
Mhm.
some people see Buddha. Some people, it depends on what you're comfortable with, what you're expecting. To somebody, I think the atheists have more fun than anybody because they're believing in nothing. They're going to die. It's going to be black. It's nothing. And all of a sudden, boom, they go into this nirvana and say, I say, gosh, you guys got a nice surprise, huh? And they say, like, wow. I mean, I had no idea. So yeah, it is what it is. Whether we think it's different or not, God is God.
Right.
Period. And God is all loving, all forgiving, and that's the way God is. We make it complicated ourselves.
It seems so. Now, before we go, I got a couple questions that with once you got your physical therapy and you were able to, I would say, excuse the term, be your normal self as you always were. How was the reaction for some? I would assume that you shared it with either family or a friend about your experience once you crossed over, and how soon after everything went back to, I'll say, normal, then you start putting the pen to paper and started sharing your story on a more of on a global scale?
I started writing right away because I'm a writer, and I thought if I could just write it out, I would be able to forget it. Just write it out like a bad dream, stick it in a drawer. But here it is 23 years later, it's still there. That's
Mhm.
because it was in my soul. People didn't want to hear about it. I couldn't get anybody to listen to me, my friends, family, nobody. They didn't. They'd say, Kathy, 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 I don't want to hear about that. So it took 10 years before somebody listened to me. And then I kept, when you come back, you kind of get the voice. It's like your conscience, but it's God, your higher self, whatever, talking to you all the time. And I kept hearing, you got to write the book. You got to write a book. You write a book for years. And then finally, I was at a conference about 3 years ago, and there was a lady that was starting her own publishing company. She was also a medium, so she hears spirits. And she picked me out and said, they say you need to write a book. And I thought, they? And she says, no, you really do. And I'm going to be the one to publish it. And I said, oh. So she badgered me into sitting down. And of course, COVID started. So I was stuck in the house anyway. And so I sat down, and it was interesting because it just kind of downloaded. It just came out. I'd sit down and start typing, and I would get all these memories or things about my dead relatives, some I hadn't even met. And it was said, this is going to be a memoir, and it has to be about you, how you came to be yourself, how you got to where you were, what happened, and the changes, so that you can explain to people. So I just sat down and wrote it, and it didn't take all that long, and then got it published, and that was 3 years ago. And this is what I'm back to do, is to explain this to people. And when I get that last person I'm supposed to tell, then I get to go home.
Wow. And the book Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat is a memoir also with your journey that we just spoke about, but there's other bonuses in the book as well. Would you mind sharing just a couple of minutes what else they can find in that book?
Well, I think you can find how you put yourself against my experience, whether it's similar or not, and take the time to open your mind a little bit, and maybe release that tight grip you might have on what you've been told by other people, and maybe give yourself some space to maybe it's not what you've been told. Be brave and experiment and see how it feels to take in a simpler way of living, of just living a positive life, and trusting in God's goodness and his grace and his love for you. It's unconditional. You can't
Wow.
screw it up. Okay.
What an uplifting way to end the show. And where can the listeners of Let's Find Out get their own copy of your book?
Well, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and I have a website that's www and the name of the book. So Amazon's got it in a Kindle and a paperback and Audible, so that everybody has a chance to experience it. And I appreciate it very much.
And we appreciate you being on the show. Thank you again for being. And if you don't mind, if you ever get to get that divine intervention and to write a second book, it would be great if you come back on the show and we could talk about it there.
Thanks, Diego. I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you. Thank you again. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as our YouTube channel. And we are also on Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Thank you for listening to Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, and on Anchor. For more information about Let's Find Out with co-host Diego, please visit us on Facebook.com/co-host Diego, on Twitter at co-host_Diego, and on Instagram as co-host Diego. Copyright co-host Diego. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.